Hello everyone, welcome to ChessVisor. In today's video, I am going to show you the game played between Praggnanandhaa Ramesh Babu and Raunak Sadhwani. So this was the game from Sharjah Masters round number 2. Without much delay, let's get started. With the white pieces, Prag starts the game with the 1 e4. Opening wise, we are seeing the Roy Lopez, the famous opening, and after a6, now it's called Morphy's defense. But after bishop a4, knight f6, castles and bishop e7, and here uh, Prag decided to give up the bishop early in the game, so bishop takes c6, and now it's called delayed exchange variation of the Roy Lopez. And as you can see, the e5 is hanging, so does the e4, so you cannot capture the e pawn, and if you do so, you are going to waste multiple tempos. Say for example, let me show you that very quickly. So let's say I capture on e5, and now the e4 is hanging, so you take back, I mean the black can take back, rook e1, queen d4 threatening f2 and the knight. So this goes on, and black has a very good initiative. In fact, black is more than equal, because we have given up multiple tempos in this process. So that's why it's not a wise choice to capture the free pawn. Rather, you simply defend it and threaten the pawn. So now you play knight to d7 as a black. So this is actually a multi-purpose move. This knight is heading towards the center of the board, that is d4 square. You will see in a moment. And also it is actually vacating this f6 square. It's a square clearance, but because this queen knight is going to go to c4 to put pressure on the e5 square. So in that case, you are going to play f6 to simply support the e5. So let us continue the game. Bishop e3, castles, and then knight b d2 and c5. So taking more control over the d4 square. Knight to c4, pressure on e5. Now that's covered. And as you can see, there is one problem in black's camp, that is f5. So here, imagine a knight putting on f5. So that's what I hear Prag propose with the move knight h4. And here, Raunak, carry out his own plan, that is, coming to c6 and then to d4. So here, after knight f5, he did not capture, rather he played the move knight c6 as per the plan. And going back in this position, if you want to, literally stop this move, knight to f5, you have to play something like a pawn to g6 here. So instead of, moving the knight, you could play the move pawn to g6. It looks like we are weakening the king structure, but in this position, I think black can play this move and park the king to the h8 and then use the g file to attack. So that could be an idea. Say for example, queen g4, knight b6 discovery, and then queen g3, knight takes c4, d takes c4. This is completely equal and fine position for both. So going back in the game, he plays knight b8. So going with the plan. So coming to d4 square. Yes. So knight f5 and then knight c6. So here also you don't want to capture this knight, because already Prag has given up the bishop pair. So it is just to wait. Let's see how you can make use of the bishop pair. So that's why he didn't capture. If you capture, e takes f5, knight c6, and then knight to d2. This knight is coming to e4 square. So multi-purpose move again. This is a space gaining move, and also you vacate this square for the knight, and from the e4 square, I think the knight will be centralized, and it can control number of squares. So let's say for example, queen d7, pawn to g4. You can even play this move. This was actually the idea we were seeing from the black's perspective, like g6 idea. So it looks aggressive, but it is playable. So knight c6 and then queen g4, threatening mate in 1. So of course it is defended after bishop takes f5. So now Raunak decided to capture the knight. So annoying knight. After e takes e5, this was the good decision made by Prag, I would say, because you have the option of capturing the bishop with the queen and do not ruin the pawn structure. But here actually he vacates that square, as I said earlier. So he wants to put the knight here. And once he kicked the knight, he comes with the knight to d2, and after knight to d4, here actually this is a premature move by Raunak, and in fact this is the mistake in the game, the first mistake of the game. So here, as you can see, white's pawn on f5 is a weak pawn. So how do we put pressure here? Say for example, this move actually putting pressure, but before that, we have to consider this queen to d7 move. It put pressure immediately, and you can even prepare the move pawn to g6. As you can see, this queen is hanging. So here, let us play the usual move, or the move was played in the game in a different variation, knight to e4. And now I can play the move knight to d4. It comes with the multiple threats. c2 is hanging and f5 is also hanging. So after bishop takes d4, c takes d4, and black is very fine, I would say, because The pawns are fixed on the dark squares, so that means the bishop is a bad bishop, but he can figure out a plan with the bishop, and he has this chance to push down the c file, I mean c pawn to the c4 and create some weakness on the c file and use the rooks along the 7th rank to defend against the mating attack. So this is not an issue for black, but in the game he played knight to d4. It's kind of an immature move or premature move, because we can play the move pawn c3 here, just kick the knight, and once you land on c2 it looks like we are in trouble, but actually not, because now Prag plays the move bishop h6 threatening mate again and forcing the rook to f7. So after rook f7 he plays rook ac1 threatening the knight. Unfortunately this knight does not have any escape squares, so that means he has to do the counter attack. So he plays the move king h8, and now comes the in between move, that is knight to e4. While you are going to capture my bishop, I'm going to improve my piece, and that's a brilliant brilliant idea. So here after g takes h6, and now I take back. So in this position also, I think in this position do not capture the d3 with the queen, and you are going to blunder the queen actually. So g h6, and then rook takes c2, and rook to g7 attacking the queen, and here also you cannot touch the d3 pawn, so again the queen would be trapped. So if he plays rook g7 and queen f3. So this position, this knight is wonderfully placed, and the pawns are ruined on the king structure, but white has to figure out a way to how to attack. So here this is an x-ray, so the queen cannot go further. Queen to g8, so attacking a2, pawn to b3 covering that square, and now comes the move rook to d8 putting pressure on the backward pawn, g3 covering g file now and preparing to do something else on the center of the board or on the queen side. So here he plays queen f7. Instead of that, there is one interesting variation available from black's perspective. It's a computerized variation. I would like to show that. In case he can sacrifice this pawn, okay, this is not going to work for black, but just it's an interesting variation. The queen h6, rook takes d3, rook to d2, rook takes d2, knight takes d2, and after all the transaction you can play the move rook to g5, but after queen f3 we cannot capture the pawn. Say for example queen c8, you are putting or adding one more attacker to the pawn. I can play knight e4 here. You do not have the option of capturing the pawn with both the pieces. Say for example, if you are capturing with the queen, I'm going to capture the rook and I'm winning. And if you are going to capture here, you are going into the immortal pin, and you are not going to get out of the spin. That means you are going to lose the entire rook. Say for example, I can simply bring the rook into the third rank and I attack you, and that's it. So that was about the h5 idea, in case if you are wondering. So going back in the game, he plays queen f7, Prag plays rook d1, rook to d7, c4. It looks like Prag leaves the d3 pawn as a weakness, but black cannot do anything about that. So pawn to b4, a3, and now Prag finds, or he wants to open up more lines to to activate his pieces freely. So he wants to open up the a files. That's why a3, and he defends it, but it is not going to hold it. A takes b4, a takes b4, rook a2, rook to g8, and now comes the move rook to da1, doubling on the a file. Rook g d8, putting pressure on the d3 pawn, but now he simply pins the rook down. Queen e8 unpinning that, and now comes rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and now rook a6, putting pressure on the f6 pawn. So c6, it is defended by a tactical idea, that's obstruction they say. Queen e3 putting pressure on c5. So a lot of weaknesses in black's camp, and that's what actually Prag is doing, or spotting it and trying to attack it. So queen e3, queen h5. So here actually, if you are thinking about defending this pawn further, you're actually mistaken, because if you put the queen on f8, you are going passive. And one more thing is that you are not actually defending that, because you can simply take on a c6 and again put pressure on this pawn. So you are not going to save that pawn. Rather, instead of sitting and still giving up the pawn, why don't we create the counter attack? That's what actually Raunak was doing. So queen h5, knight takes c5, queen takes f5. The knight was wonderfully placed on e4. Now it looks even a better square, that is e6. After rook takes c6, that square is available for the knight. After h5, he plays knight e6, threatening the rook. The rook to a8 is a big blunder in the game. In fact, this was the last move played by Raunak. And in this position, if you want to pause the video and try to find the brilliant queen sacrifice by Prag, and he immediately plays the move queen to a7, a brilliant queen sacrifice, taking advantage of the fact that the king is not defended enough. That is the back rank issue. The knight when placed on e6, it is covering this g7 square. If we can give one check, that's mate. So that's why he can play this brilliant queen sacrifice. If you simply take, I'm going to go to the back rank. You have to defend it, and again, I mean, you have to black it, and again, I'm going to deliver mate. And if you are wondering in this position, this is actually a kind of a what do you say, the double attack. Okay, if you want to put the rook behind the bishop, you can do that, but the problem is you can do another brilliant queen sack with the queen takes e7. Again, you cannot take because of the back rank issue. Say for example, you are going to go to rook to g8. Actually, instead of rook to a8, Raunak should have played the move rook to g8 at first. So here rook to g8 and then knight to d8, threatening f7, and trying to force the king out of the corner. So queen g6, knight f7 check. If you want to get checkmated quickly, you can give up the queen, or you have to come to the nasty discoveries. So knight takes e5 check, king h6, and then you can even play this move. So anyway, you are going to get checkmated. You don't have to capture the queen. So still you are winning. So that's why in this position, after 37th move, that is a brilliant queen move. In this position, actually, Raunak Sadhwani simply resigned the game. I hope you enjoyed this quick analysis of this game between Praggnanandhaa and Raunak Sadhwani. With this win, actually, Prag, I think he got 2 wins in a row, and also he is closer to 2700 mark, and is very very closer to become a super GM. And I hope, I think he's going to achieve it. I'm not hoping it. He's going to achieve it in a couple of games, or 3 or 4 games before, I think, Sharjah Master. I think he would achieve it. And let me know what are your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Still, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing and press the bell icon to get notified for the future videos. As usual, this is Chess Wiser, your wise choice to improve your chess.